The glass lid had already been lowered when Mary Jane Mendoza saw it. Not a miracle. Not a superstition. A small movement in a little face that was supposed to be still. She was standing in a funeral home in Salinas de Hidalgo, in the Mexican state of San Luis Potosí, close enough to the coffin that she could see the fine layer of makeup placed on her daughter's cheeks. The room was packed with relatives and neighbors who had come to say goodbye. A few people were praying quietly. Others stared at the floor as if looking up would make this real. Inside the coffin lay Camila Roxana Martinez Mendoza, 3 years old, dressed and arranged the way funeral workers do when a family needs something to look at besides loss. Mary Jane leaned forward, her breath fogging the glass for a second, and she watched her daughter's eyelashes. Then they moved. A faint flutter. So small it could have been nothing, until it happened again. Mary Jane's throat closed. She pressed her fingertips to the glass as if she could feel warmth through it. Someone beside her whispered, "No!" like they were trying to stop her eyes from seeing. Mary Jane slammed her palm against the coffin and shouted for help. The wake did not start as a horror story. It started with a sick child, a mother trying to get help, and a chain of decisions that turned into paperwork and a coffin. On Wednesday, August 17th, Camilla had stomach pain and began vomiting, with a fever that wouldn't settle. Her mother took her to a pediatrician, who said the child appeared dehydrated and advised Mary Jane to take her to the Salinas de Hidalgo Basic Community Hospital. At the hospital, Mary Jane watched staff try to manage what they believed they were seeing. Later reporting described them removing Camilla's clothes, putting wet towels on her to bring the fever down, and clipping a pulse oximeter to her finger. After about an hour, Mary Jane said they sent her home with oral rehydration and drops of paracetamol. She left with medicine and a mother's uneasiness, the sense that you're being told she'll be fine while your body keeps insisting something is wrong. Camilla did not improve. The vomiting continued. The family sought another opinion. Another doctor, according to reports, prescribed different medication and suggested fruit and water, anything she could keep down. She couldn't. When they returned to the hospital emergency room, Mary Jane later described a delay as staff struggled to find a vein for an IV. She said her daughter still had the strength to cling to her, to hug her, and that was what made the next moment feel impossible. She was told Camilla had died. Mary Jane said it happened fast. In her account, staff removed the IV after only minutes and took Camilla into another room. She tried to follow and was stopped. When she finally reached her daughter, she said Camilla still had enough strength to wrap her arms around her. Then people in scrubs pulled the child away and told the mother to let her rest in peace. Mary Jane said she never saw an electrocardiogram done before the decision was final, and after that, she was not allowed to see Camilla again until the body was sent out. That gap between the last warm hug and the first time she saw her daughter dressed for burial is where a lot of the family's anger lived. It is also where the questions started, the ones that don't leave when the candles burn down. What signs were missed? What checks were skipped? What would have changed if someone had paused and looked one more time? In a town like Salinas de Hidalgo, death became logistical fast. A hospital released remains. A funeral home prepared a wake. Relatives were called. Someone found clothing. Someone else found money. Time kept moving, even when a parent's mind stopped. When the hearse arrived at the funeral home, Mary Jane walked in behind the staff and saw Camila on a metal table under bright lights, the child's skin cool and waxy, her lips set in a line that didn't belong to her. The funeral workers spoke softly, asking the family what outfit they wanted, whether they wanted the glass lid, whether they wanted the room opened early for relatives driving in from the countryside. Mary Jane answered through numbness, because answering was what kept her from falling apart. Camilla's body was placed in a coffin sized for a child, and a glass cover was set above her so people could see her without touching her. The next day, the viewing began. People arrived in waves: family, neighbors, friends from the ranch community Mary Jane later described as supportive and close. Condolences were spoken in low voices. Someone adjusted flowers. Someone tried to keep Mary Jane seated because her legs wouldn't stop trembling. That was when she noticed the glass. It started to fog. At first, Mary Jane thought it was the room's humidity, the way warm bodies fill a small space. Then the fogging appeared in a patch that looked like breath on a window. She stared at it until her eyes hurt. Some people told her she was hallucinating, that grief does things to you, that she should not open the lid. Mary Jane leaned closer and saw Camilla's eyes move. Her mother's instincts detonated. She hit the coffin and screamed. The room surged forward. And it wasn't only Mary Jane now. Camilla's paternal grandmother pushed in, bent close to the glass, and saw it too. They opened the lid. A hand went to Camilla's wrist. Someone checked for a pulse and said a number, later reported as 97 beats per minute. In that instant, the funeral home stopped being a place of mourning and became an emergency scene. People shouted for an ambulance. Someone ran outside to flag it down. Mary Jane leaned over her daughter, calling her name, begging her to breathe, trying to will sound back into her chest. First responders rushed Camilla back to the hospital and began life-saving measures. The family followed, half running, half floating, carried by adrenaline and disbelief. It did not save her. Camilla was pronounced dead again after the attempt to revive her failed. In the aftermath, Mary Jane described being left with 2 death certificates listing different causes, one referencing dehydration, another listing brain swelling. She said she sought accountability, asking that the hospital's staff and leadership be changed so it would not happen to another family. Over time, the story traveled far beyond San Luis Potosí. It was retold as an internet legend, often shifted into other countries or other decades, sometimes turned into a tale about a teenager waking in a morgue and dying again. The documented reality remains anchored to a 3-year-old girl, a glass coffin, a mother watching fog form where it shouldn't, and a room full of people realizing at once that they were looking at a living child in a place built for the dead. Mary Jane Mendoza's grief arrived twice, first in a hospital where she was told it was over, then in a funeral home where she saw it wasn't over, until it was. And after the second pronouncement, there was no relief, no closure, only the memory of her palm against the glass and the sound of her own voice breaking as she begged the world to give her daughter back. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.